Because of technology, nowadays, in 2017, money is even less important. So when I was a kid growing up, 10 or 11, the most important thing was having like a really awesome big TV and having like a Super Nintendo with all the video games. That was the hard thing, was getting a bunch of video games. Video games were really expensive. Convincing my parents to buy me a video game was very difficult. It probably had to be my birthday or Christmas, and I would get like one video game because they were like 60 bucks, which is in today's money like 80 or 90 bucks. And my parents aren't about to blow a bunch of money on their kid. I guess I had bad parents, right? No, they're not bad, but you get the idea. So the life I was living was very middle class. Like we weren't poor and there was nothing bad going on, but there was a lot of stuff I couldn't get just because it was expensive and my parents didn't want to buy it. So if you would think of a really rich kid back then versus me, what did they have in life that was different from my life? Well, they probably had a much bigger TV, which their whole family enjoyed, because back then it was mostly about TV. Like the difference between rich people and poor people, because we spent a lot of time watching TV. The biggest difference in your life was, how big is your TV? How awesome is your TV? How many videotapes did you have? I guess we were renting videotapes a lot, but even so, how many videotapes did you have? If you're rich, you could buy any videotape you want, you can watch any movie you want, and that was cool. If you were rich, you had a really big TV, and you could watch awesome things on your big TV. If you were rich, your kid had the best video game system in all the video games. And that was the difference between my life, was that I didn't have a giant TV. I didn't have all the video games. So my life was suckier than rich people's lives for that reason. Nowadays, because of technology, things have shifted. So what is the number one thing that we use nowadays? What is the number one thing you're using it right now? It's our cell phones. It's our smartphones. That is the number one thing we use. Before it was really about TVs and like console video games. And now it's really about smartphones and to a lesser degree, computers. If you think about the life of a rich person now and the life of a middle class person now, what's really weird is the items that we use the most, a smartphone, is the same item that the middle class person and we're not even talking about rich, we're talking about extremely wealthy person is using. That's our number one item, and both rich people and middle class people are using the same thing. We're spending most of our life being, whether you're rich or not rich, having the same experience, which is looking at your cell phone and using the internet. So when I was a kid, the rich kid had like all the video games, the games I'll never get to experience. But now the rich kid has the same phone as me. Right? And I'm not just talking about the difference between a rich kid and a middle class kid. I'm talking about the difference between a mega wealthy person. Like Mark Zuckerberg, not Steve Jobs, he's dead, but Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, all these mega rich guys. They spend 80% of their time, I'm not going to put out a number, but they spend a lot of their time, especially a lot of their free time, the exact same way you do, which is staring at a smartphone or at their computer. And they're using the exact same quality of smartphone or computer as you, right? If you want the best phone right now, it's either the iPhone 7 or Galaxy S8 or whatever the LG flagship phone is, whatever, any one of those flagship phones. And they're not cheap, but they're not extremely expensive. They're not, so if you're like middle class, I would say even if you're lower middle class, you can own the same most used item as the richest man in the world. Those richest men are using the same cell phone as you. And you know what? Let's say you think I'm exaggerating. Let's say you think, it's really hard to afford an iPhone 7. And I understand, it's like 700, 800 bucks. It's not easy to afford. If you buy a used 1-year-old phone, maybe not an iPhone, but you buy like a Galaxy S7, and you buy it used, you can probably get for like 200 bucks. The experience difference between an S8 and an S7 is very small. I know the screen's different, blah, 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 but basically all we're trying to do is access the internet. all we're trying to do is message people and play some video games, I guess. But mainly what humans are doing is accessing the internet and chatting with each other. And pretty much any smartphone can do that. And some smartphones are as cheap as like $100. If you buy a used smartphone, it could be $100 or even less. And it could be a pretty awesome smartphone, because the difference in smartphones is getting very small. And really, you probably could buy the nicest iPhone or the nicest Galaxy phone if you really wanted to. So the experience we're having in our lives between the richest people and the poorest people is really getting smaller. Here's a kind of interesting twist too that I just want to add on the end, which is actually the wealth gap is growing. The difference between the richest people in the world and the poorest people in the world, that gap is getting much bigger. I can't remember what the statistic was. I saw something about like the 12 richest people in the world have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50% of the world. That's crazy when you think about it. And don't quote me on that statistic, because I'm just taking it off the top of my head. And you can try to look it up and find out for yourself. You have the internet, you have a smartphone, so you're just as well off as a very rich person. But that gap is getting bigger, and I want to do a little myth busting for a second here, because Korean people have this idea that in Korea the wealth gap is really big and crazy. Actually, there's a measurement of the wealth gap, and it's called the Gini coefficient. And Korea's is pretty okay. It's actually, I think it's like number 20 in the world. That's out of 200. So 20 out of 200 ain't bad, right? Top 10% as far as even income distribution. America is terrible. America is one of the, I think it's one of the worst as far as income wealth gap in the world, as far as industrialized countries. Like, America's wealth gap is crazy, and it's getting much worse. And the wealth gap in the world is getting much worse. And I think even the wealth gap in Korea is getting worse. So it's really weird when you think about the fact that the actual wealth gap in the world is increasing, but the gap in our experience as humans is decreasing, because you can own the exact same cell phone as the richest man in the world. When I was growing up, the richest kid in the world had all the video games that I always wanted, and I was not going to get to play those video games. He had the super awesome big TV that I was never going to experience. And it wasn't, I'm not trying to complain or anything, but there was a big difference in the lives of rich people and not rich people. And now when you look at it, the difference in the lives between rich people and not rich people is very similar. We're looking at the same smartphone. If it's not the same smartphone, we're looking at the same internet. We're using the same apps, and we're doing the same thing, which is just using the internet to look up information, watch some videos like this one on YouTube, and chat with friends. So I think life between very rich people and middle class and even lower middle class people is getting much closer. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you hate this video, give it a thumbs down. If you love me or if you hate me, please please subscribe. And of course, leave some comments, because whenever I talk about it's not so necessary to need money, money's not a big issue. A lot of Korean people in my comments get really angry and start saying, like, I'm some rich guy and I'm from America and I don't know what it's like not to have money. Quite the opposite. I'm definitely not rich. I'm definitely not poor. And I've never really been poor, but I'm not rich, and I'll tell you, I don't need to be super rich. It's not something I desire that much. But anyway, leave your comments below about whether or not I'm just stupid and you still need to be rich if you want a good life. Or if you agree with me and think like, hey man, I've got an awesome phone, the same as Warren Buffett, I'm happy. Whatever you think, please leave some comments below. And the number one thing, please remember to have a super most awesome day.